Next in the queue is Jason in Denver is on line 4. Hi, Jason. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Ah, you're on the air.
All right. Yeah, I had a question for you guys. I'm a free thinker, and I haven't been one for more than probably a year or so. But it's really exciting, and I've kind of opened my mind up to a lot of things. One of the things that has been of primary importance to me is just the value of humanity. I would guess classify myself as a humanist, and the value of human life. And so I'm still very much puzzled by the justification for on-demand abortion, because it seems to me, and let me clarify before I go any further, I'm not saying that in every single case that abortion is uncalled for, much like morality in general. Obviously it's fluid, but I would compare it similar to what I would compare other types of crimes to, where, for instance, like stealing, for instance. You know, there might be a case where I would have to steal in order to support my family, in order to protect them, or to, but in general, we don't steal from one another. And so, and when it comes to abortion, just the idea of taking a human life that could potentially be able to survive on its own seems unethical to me, and I'd like to hear how you would justify that.
Fair enough.
Well, when you say that it's not unjustified in every case, who do you think should make the decision about when abortion is justified and when it isn't?
Well, I guess I would compare it similar to how, you know, the government, we as a people collectively decide on certain things, like murder, for instance. Okay. You know, we believe that murder is wrong. We would send people to jail for murdering, but if there's a unique case where I'm protecting my family, then we would all agree that it's okay to, you know, shoot the perpetrator or whatever.
Okay. So
similarly, with, you know, taking another life, you know, I would say, you know, it would be a collective thing based more on morality and based on esteem for human life than it would be upon just anybody's own preference or decision.
Okay. So the public gets to decide when an abortion is justified.
Well, would you say that the public should decide when a murder is justified?
That's a little bit different case, but yeah, let me ask you something. Should the public decide that you have to give up a kidney so that someone else should live? Can you be forced to give your kidney to someone? Okay, why not?
Right. But the kidney is not a living being.
But it's a human cell, and you'd be saving a human life.
But it's not a separate life from yours.
Okay, but if it's going to save a separate life from yours, can you be forced to give your kidney to your own child? Can a court compel you to give your kidney to your own child?
No. But I don't see how you could compare an organ with an actual human.
Well, what I'm comparing is the fact that until a certain point during the pregnancy, the fetus is not viable. It is dependent on the mother's body to survive. And so by what authority do you compel her to continue to use her body to support someone else?
Well, when you say it's not viable, you have to define your terms, because you could even say a baby after it's born isn't viable.
Well, it's not a baby after it's born. If you take it from the mother, it's not dependent on the mother's body for anything. Okay?
It's dependent on the mother's breast.
No, it isn't. You can feed the child formula.
Yeah.
Any woman, woman could sustain that child.
Exactly. In the exact same way, you could also take a premature baby, and you could give it, put it into an incubator, and allow it to survive that way. So there is artificial means to make. And
there's a hard stop to that. And prior to that, fetuses do not survive outside the womb.
Yeah. There are a couple of...
Neither would they survive after they're born if they're not cared for, just like a premature baby would not survive either.
That is a totally separate issue, because after they're born, any competent adult can care for that child. Prior to their birth, they are completely dependent on the mother's body.
Biologically dependent, not
biologically
emotionally
dependent.
Yeah. Here's the problem here's something that I feel I should mention, because it's, and I certainly, on the one hand, there is, I'm simpatico with how you're trying to think of this. If you're trying to think of it in humanist terms, I've heard people arguing for vegetarianism and against the eating of meat for many of the same reasons that you're sort of giving here, for your views on the abortion issue, that a life is a life is a life. But you have a couple of presuppositions, or at least one key presupposition that you're arguing from, which is that you are sort of automatically equating the termination of a pregnancy through abortion to like the same sort of homicide where, like, if I walked into a convenience store and shot the guy at the register, you're saying that you're essentially considering those things morally equivalent, and I don't think that they are morally equivalent. They're, as Jen has pointed out, first off, for quite a long time during the gestation process, right? What you're thinking of as a fetus is basically it's a little blastula. It's a tiny little clump of cells that's not even the size of a chickpea, and in many of these cases, these little embryos, these little early on versions of a human being, are spontaneously and naturally aborted. There are many cases where an egg will be fertilized, but it will not attach to the uterine wall, and it'll get flushed out, and there you go.
Right.
So there are.
In a similar way, many people die from natural causes. I mean, that's just obviously happens even after you're born.
But I think
the reason I compare those two to a murder after and before is because I'm talking about a baby who is still viable at, like, say 5 months, or say even sometimes 4 months, but for sure 5 months old, where you could take the baby out of the womb, and it could, if it had loving care from a doctor, it could still survive. And so I'm saying,
yeah, but you know that in case of actual abortions, and Jen, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but those sorts of abortions are a vanishingly smaller number, right?
Yeah.
And they are usually only done. In fact, I think in most cases those very late-term abortions are already illegal, and they're usually done solely to save the life of the mother. I mean, if they're so desperate,
or in the case where there's a catastrophic problem with the fetus, then the fetus will not survive.
Like the fetus will, like it's anencephalic or so.
Yeah, and I understand that, and so you guys would agree with me then, I guess, that in those cases that it should be illegal.
Well, it is illegal.
It is illegal already. But I think the difference where we're coming from, the direction we're coming from this question on, is that we still agree that we agree, Jen and I think most people who take the pro-choice position, is that we believe that it is the mother's responsibility and not some the overall abortion question should be treated as a medical issue.
Yeah.
And when it comes to and I think that there is this misunderstanding. There's this assumption that some people make that abortions are these things that women go and get like a manicure if they just
right.
Just,
or that you can walk into an abortion clinic 8 months pregnant and say, you know what, I've changed my mind, I don't want to be pregnant, let's just do the abortion. That does not happen.
Yeah, I mean,
that's not how it works.
Yeah, I think it's certainly it can be a troubling issue, but I think the central question that you have to look at is, at what point does the mother give up her personhood for the potential personhood of the fetus in her womb? At what point does its right exceed hers?
Well, or at least be on an equal level.
Yeah.
And I think the law is clear. Yeah, I mean, that point is delineated by the law, and it's actually pretty conservative. Okay, so there's a point at which you can't get an abortion, except in cases where the mother's life is in danger or there's some catastrophic abnormality and the fetus will not survive.
Right, because I'm not arguing for microscopic cell abortion type of stuff. I'm talking about a developed fetus that would be viable if it wasn't aborted.
Okay.
So
abortion on demand means that the woman can go to an abortion clinic at any point up to that point where the law says no more. The fetus's interests are now on par with the mother's. A woman can walk into an abortion clinic at any point up to that time and get a legal abortion. That's what abortion on demand means. It doesn't mean that after you cross over that point that you can just go get an abortion on a whim because you changed your mind after 5 or 6 months.
Yeah. So I think we figured out that what you're really overly concerned about isn't that pressing of a problem. And it's
okay, because
illegal.
I was definitely under the impression that babies could be aborted even at the point where the fetus would be viable or able to survive outside of the womb.
No. Those only medical emergencies in those cases. Only medical emergencies, like dire medical emergencies. Yeah.
And you understand how very late-term abortions are done, right? For like third trimester abortions where the fetus dies and you've got to do an abortion.
Yeah.
You understand what's involved in that, right?
It is protection of the mother, you're saying, basically.
No. I want to make
the
clear.
procedure.
The procedure is that you induce labor. The woman has to deliver a dead baby.
Oh, right. Okay.
So it's not, some outpatient procedure that you get done somewhere.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if your big concern is that there are all these possibly viable babies out there just being chucked in, dumpsters as a matter of routine, I don't think that's really happening as much as you might be worrying about. Also, what was I going to say? Oh, the best position to take, and then I think the best way to put it into practice is, of course, that if abortion is the thing that troubles you as a general rule, then by all means, promote comprehensive sex education in the schools, promote contraceptive education, contraceptive availability, make sure that people who don't want to have babies aren't out there having them unintentionally, make sure that we're all out there being protected from those unwanted pregnancies and unwanted other problems that can happen, STDs, and just, sexual responsibility is the key. And that more than anything else, knowing what you're getting into if you choose to be sexually active, is the thing that's going to reduce abortions in the country. Just a big legislative situation that takes a big umbrella solution to something that is in fact a big tent solution to what is actually a very complex problem. Is a little too draconian, and that's the big worry. All right.
All right.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next column, but thanks very much for your question. It was a good one.